This is Duke University.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and kick off tonight's event. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Karsh Conversations, exploring careers in consulting, hosted by the Duke Career Center. My name is Grace Athey. I am one of the assistant directors, and I oversee the business, finance, and consulting career community. And so we are excited to host an event tailored to an area of interest for some of you students, with being consulting. And I am joined by three wonderful Duke University alumni, and I will have them introduce themselves. Katherine, do you want to kick us off with introductions?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Katherine. I just graduated from Duke in May 2023, so I'm a recent grad. I'm living in Washington, D.C., and I work at Booz Hamilton doing government consulting. And while at Duke, I studied public policy and sociology. And I'll pass it to Ashna.
Hi everyone, I'm Ashna, similar to Katherine. I graduated from Duke this past May, so also a recent grad. I also live in Washington, D.C. and work at Booz Hamilton along with Katherine. And at Duke, I was a double major in public policy and global health, and also did the innovation and entrepreneurship certificate. And Tyler, over to you.
Yep, I guess I'm the last person. So, hey everyone, hope you're having a great evening. My name's Tyler Chery. I graduated from Duke in 2020, so I'm actually the oldest alum here, which is crazy to think about. But I live in Dallas and I work at Wyman. I work as a senior consultant. I actually used to work at Booz Allen, so there's another fun fact. But I studied mechanical engineering and religious studies at Duke.
Thank you. We are excited to have each of you with us tonight, and I know that you'll offer wonderful perspectives for the students able to join us tonight. And so the plan for tonight's event is going to be going through some questions that I have planned out for each of you to answer as you wish. But for those of you joining us, feel free to use the Q&A function to pop in some questions that you might have. If you want us to touch on additional thoughts or ideas that you have, hopefully they can offer expertise or advice for your interests in the careers that you want to pursue. But let's go ahead and kick it off by having each of you tell us a little bit more about your role within consulting and the firm that you're currently at, a little bit more in depth, just a brief synopsis, if you will. And whoever wants to kick us off.
I'm happy to start. So yeah, like I said, I'm a senior consultant at Wyman. I am in the Dallas office. There are a lot of offices across the U.S. and the world that Wyman has, but I chose Dallas. So I work mostly in financial services and transportation, but Wyman has health and life sciences practice. They have communications practice. So most of my work is focused on commercial clients in the financial services and transportation space. So I've been doing that now for 2.5 years.
I can go. I am just at the consultant level at Booz Allen Hamilton. I entered as a general management consultant, but we work primarily with federal government clients. That's why I'm based out of DC. So right now I work for the US Postal Service on a project, and I'm new to the firm, so that's the only project I've been on thus far.
Happy to end this question series. So I've recently started at Booz Allen. I work as a health consultant, so I work under the health account, and I currently support a project for the Defense Health Agency, so working in sort of the military health space, but there is a lot of reach in terms of the healthcare work that
I think, Ashna, we might have lost you unless it's my connection. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, perfect. Ashna, if you hear us, we'll come back so you can answer that. But we'll go ahead and pop over to the next question. What does a day in the life look for you? What does it look like for you as a consultant within your current firm, or even for you, Tyler, within a previous role that you had? What does a day in the life of a consultant look like? Is it what's on TikTok, or is it a little bit different?
It is not what is on TikTok. I think for most people, it's, once you get on a project, everyone's in rhythm. For somebody who's maybe a consultant or an analyst, you might report to somebody at the manager level, for example. So for me, it's usually consists of, I check in. We have a stand-up meeting every morning with the team, and that may have like a partner or two, partners like the highest level. And then maybe a couple consultants, and then maybe a manager to kind of oversee the day-to-day operations of the project. So you have a check-in. Maybe you're working on a few things from the day before, tightening up some slides, a lot of PowerPoint and Excel naturally. So, you're revisiting an analysis or you're conducting some research. Then I think the big thing about Oliver Wyman is that there are a lot of formal check-ins. So throughout the day, yeah, you might have 1.5 hours, 2 hours alone to kind of crank out some work, but you're constantly checking in with your manager to make sure you're on the right track, to make sure that, or in my case, maybe I'm checking in with other people to make sure they're on the right track. And then at the end of the day, we have a team stand down, and then usually I'll log on for a few hours at nighttime, after dinner, and kind of tidy up some things, or, finish up things that I think will be relevant for the next day. So in my case, yeah, the hours are a little more than normal, but it wasn't always like that.
Thank you. Love that. The extra insight that hopefully is helpful for students to just get a little perspective of what it's like. Ashna, we are briefly chatting about the day-to-day life, or what a typical day looks like for you within your firm and the current role that you have. And so if you want to answer that question, as well as maybe like wrap up what you were previously saying, as I know we lost connection with you, just so that they can get a feel for your background.
Sure. Sorry I dropped off. I think my connection is not on my side today, but I'm not sure how much followed through from my last answer, but I work in the health account at Booz Allen. So all of my exposure has been on the side of the clients in the healthcare space. I'm currently supporting a project with the Defense Health Agency. And so I work in the military health space at the firm in terms of a day in the life as a consultant. So I check my email first thing every morning. I currently support 2 different work streams on my project, one of which is developing content for public health campaigns for the Defense Health Agency.
I'm gonna give it a second, just in case. We love technology. Katherine, do you want to give it a go in the meantime?
Yeah, definitely. So Ashna and I are coworkers as well, so I can probably speak to similar things that Ashna does, although I'm in the citizen services part of the firm, so I'm not a health consultant. But typical day in the life, similarly to what Tyler said, we have like a team stand-up meeting every day where everyone talks about the work that they've been doing and that they will accomplish that day. My team has about 12 people on it, and I'm the most junior individual on the project, which is cool because I get to like interact with people of all different levels in their careers. And then mostly right now, just being at like the lowest level, I do a lot of Excel and PowerPoint, some writing and research too, like things that I have experience in from Duke and internships. And we also, I think, a little bit differently than maybe Tyler, but also could just be because he's a little more senior than Ashna and I. We're not allowed to work more than 40 hours a week. So we log off right at 5, which is nice. So definitely not what TikTok shows you, as you said.
Love that. Thank you. So kind of similar to what has already been mentioned, but want to dig a little bit deeper into this, is in regards to some of the skills that you've mentioned you utilize, whether it be on the projects or communicating with your team or whatever that may be. What would you say are top 3 skills that you are currently utilizing in your current role that you would emphasize to students to work towards polishing now, if doable?
Yeah, I can answer. I think it might be hard to pick three, but the one that immediately comes to mind, and it's pretty vague. It's attention to detail, and so that might be something as simple as, and I know this sounds really pedantic, but lining up a bunch of different items in a PowerPoint slide that are exactly, like you have some piece of data and one of them shifted off to the right. And they always say like a slide that looks good is better than a slide that has bad information but looks bad, or good information but looks bad. So attention to detail is the first thing that I always tell people is like, sanity check yourself. I know at Duke, there was a professor, Clark Bray, in the mathematics department that used to always say, do a sanity check. And I hear that so much in consulting, it's crazy. So attention to detail. The second thing I'll say is probably just like curiosity, and with curiosity that goes analytical skills and research. So you deal with a lot of ambiguity in consulting. So, you might be assigned like, hey, look into this market or look into this client or whatever. And if you just do a Google search and come back and say, I couldn't really find much, that's not a good deal. I think you'll have to, uncover layers. And when you have a question about something, notate all of your questions and then just be thorough in kind of your curiosity. So, and then analytically, like I said, sanity check and that type of thing. And the last thing I'll say is going to be probably time management. So things like, yeah, you check your email in the morning, you guys have stand up, but I mentioned that, you're checking in with your manager every couple of hours a day, kind of seeing where the progress is going. And if you're not managing your time correctly, then probably deadlines will come up a lot faster than you're expecting. So I think to recap, I said, yeah, time management is the last one. Attention to detail was the first one. And the second one was like curiosity, analysis, being able to find information. So.
I can go. I agree with everything that Tyler just said. I think those are like the three main qualities or skills that I would have offered as well. I think I'll add that, and this could maybe be more helpful for someone who is also new to consulting or a recent grad. Like some of you will be soon. I think being really proactive and like speaking up is an important quality to have. There are a lot of people who it's not the type of career I would think that you can really like coast by and not speak up if you're confused. It's not the type of, you don't want to waste time kind of sitting around. If you have a question, like I know that at least at our firm or my project, they really just want you to reach out. No one wants you to be spending the client's money just like sitting around. And I think that also can be said for like, if you don't know exactly what to be working on next, or you're a little bit unclear, like how to be helpful, I think always offering yourself to help with anyone and like being proactive in that sense is really important, especially when you're at the most junior level at a firm or on a project, in terms of being successful once you start.
For sure. Thank you for sharing. I think it's helpful for students to gain perspective from someone who's already gone through undergrad and already had some time to get settled in the role to really get a feel for what's important to polish, because I think real life perspective is slightly different from a job description. And so it can be helpful insight. What would you say piqued your interest in consulting? When did you think you wanted to go into consulting? Was it more of a senior year decision? Did you come into Duke knowing? What was that journey like?
Katherine, I think I'll switch it up and let you go first this time.
Okay. Yeah, definitely happy to answer that. Not sure if this will resonate with anyone, but I decided I wanted to do consulting not until senior year. Like I had mentioned earlier, I was a public policy major. I knew I wanted to do something in and around government. I have been pre-law and thought I would go to law school in the future, but knew I never wanted to go right after college. So I was kind of searching for something that would let me be in this space, but have exposure to lots of different topics and clients. Not sure how many public policy majors are here on this call or those who study similar topics, but I never knew exactly what I wanted to do after college. I never knew exactly what type of potentially like government work or just area that I wanted to go into. So consulting, more broadly, consulting seemed like a really good fit. And I can confidently say that that definitely was the right decision. It's really nice being able to work on a lot of different things while not having to find a new job. If you get bored of your project or it's not a good fit, you can always find something new. And that was something I really liked about doing consulting. I think being, especially someone who knows, like, I want to go back to school, I also thought it seemed like a good career to like learn a lot of new things in a short amount of time, learn a lot of different skills. And I appreciated that the process like began so early in senior year, and was able to like figure everything out and go about the rest of senior year, which was a really nice bonus. And yeah, I've been really happy with it so far. So that was kind of how I got to that role. But I never did like a consulting internship. So if you haven't, don't think that you're too late or that you won't like have the skills to be successful in your role. It's definitely attainable for anyone on this call or to get the job and like be successful at it. And that was definitely something when I was applying, I thought like, oh, there's no chance I would ever get any of these jobs. Like I don't have a consulting internship like all of my friends did, but definitely not necessary.
I think I agree. I mean, I didn't do any consulting internships either, and I was pretty much set on doing engineering through senior year, or through the beginning of senior year at least. And I missed the boat on all the like the fancy companies, you know, MBB and Deloitte and all that stuff that come to campus. So I actually started at Booz, and the story behind that is I was going to do engineering, and then I realized, oh, you know what, maybe I don't want to do that. Let me do consulting, kind of figure out, you know, what I like, what's all these other industries. I like the idea that you can work on different projects and be exposed to different industries. So I networked a lot on LinkedIn, and I reached out to people who also went to Duke. And I think you all should as well if you're interested in consulting. So LinkedIn is your friend. Duke alums are your friend. As you can see, I feel like the biggest thing I want to say is that going to Duke, just being on this call is enough to get you in the door at pretty much a lot of consulting places. So don't be shy. I think the fact that you're here is indicative of definitely good potential. So yeah.
I think both of those perspectives are important to be reminded, students, as you are trying to navigate that junior level internship. Is it an end all be all if you're not able to secure that junior level internship? Understand that there's lots of options. It's never too late to pursue what you are interested in, or maybe senior year you find a different interest. That's not the end of the world, because everyone has a different experience. So what advice would you give to students right now, whether they be sophomores or seniors? I know that may be a little bit hard to view it with all of those different perspectives, but what advice would you offer to students interested in pursuing consulting?
I'm happy to chime in here. And Grace, just let me know if it ends up cutting out, and I can also contribute via the chat. But I would say my biggest point of advice would be just try to figure out what focus area or industry you're interested in. I think consulting is a very general area to work in, and I think knowing, you know, what focus area or what industry is the most interesting to you or speaks the most to you can be a really valuable tool in finding projects you're interested in and developing skill sets that will be relevant to your career. Not to say that you have to have things figured out, but I know, at least in my personal experience, coming into the consulting industry with an interest in public health has been a really helpful tool to navigate the consulting space and work on projects and gain experiences that are geared towards my own interests and my own goals. So I would say spend some time just figuring out what you're interested in, and don't be afraid to, you know, try out different things. I think that's part of what being an undergraduate student is about, is exploring different options and trying to figure out what you're actually interested in and what you actually like.
I can go next. I definitely agree with what Ashna said, and I'm in a more general area of the firm than she is, as I'm in citizen services, which, as you can imagine, encompasses a lot of different government agencies, but at the same time, it actually really does. And I didn't even pick that. They kind of saw like my resume and my interests and placed me there, and it ended up being a perfect fit. So I think you don't need to know exactly what you want to do. Like I said, that's so vague or so broad what I'm interested in, but it can help you figure out what firm might be a good fit if you're interviewing at multiple places or have multiple offers. And then, like Ashna said, once you get to a firm and you're trying to think of like what area of the firm you want to kind of break into or excel at, it's just helpful to have like a general area that you're interested in, because consulting can be like a million different things. But I would also add to those of you who are either applying for internships or jobs right now, and we might get to this later, but like Tyler said, I would definitely stress the importance of networking, not to the extent that you're like overworking yourself and planning so many networking chats that you can't get other things done. That's definitely not necessary. I saw some people kind of go like the opposite spectrum of that. And, you know, at a certain point you hit like a plateau of information. I don't think that you're going to benefit probably that much more, but I think Duke alum are always going to be really receptive to speaking with people. I spoke to so many people when I was in college, and so did all of my classmates and friends. And so now I think everyone's had the same experience where if we benefited from that, of course, people are going to be happy to, you know, pay it forward later on. And for me personally, I really benefited from those chats because I just got, like Grace mentioned earlier, more of a like personal discussion about the firm that you can't really find online, or even perhaps in like a more formal conversation such as this. And then also when I ended up interviewing or writing cover letters or things like that, I could speak to things that people told me in a informal chat that made me want to join the firm. So I think it's helpful both for yourself and, you know, in terms of the like recruiting process.
Yeah, and just to add to that, my biggest piece of advice, if you're sophomore, junior, or whatever, yeah, the internship is important, but figure out, I think doing your research is the biggest thing you can do, is just availing yourself with all the available companies that you might be interested in. Because at Duke, I know there's a temptation to just kind of gather your stuff up really quickly and head out to Tech Connect or whatever career fair and just try to talk to the McKinsey recruiter really fast and, you know, toss your resume at every single consulting stand. And that can work, but it's not advisable in my opinion. I would say, you know, do your research. Companies like Booz, Allen, Hamilton, I didn't even know about them until probably halfway through college. And where I work now, Oliver Wyman, I definitely didn't know about them until junior, senior year. And I mean, yeah, I did honestly get an offer from Bain, but I turned them down, and I work at Oliver Wyman. But there are a lot of different companies out there. I mean, there's dozens of companies, and it's not the end of the world if you can't get into Deloitte or McKinsey or something. So do your research, figure out maybe the office you want to work at, the industries that they specialize in, and maybe somebody that your older sister went to Duke with works there. I don't know, figure it out, you know, do your research. So that's my advice.
I second and third that. Because it's been brought up, I would love to hop over to this topic of networking. It's been mentioned several times. We advise our students heavily. And so what is each of your perspectives on networking, informational interviews, where students are reaching out to alumni or even other professionals within the industry to have a conversation about their role, learn more about the industry, or even reaching out to you? What's your perspective on that? Do's, don'ts, tips, tricks, what have you?
I can start. I think I again really stress how it can be important, like again, not for a maybe formal recruiting benefit, but also just for yourself. So you can, like Tyler said, be a little more, I think, strategic with where you apply. I agree that like throwing your resume to every single firm, like sure, you could do that, but I think you'll be happiest if you spend like a little bit of time figuring out what type of firm makes more sense for you. But I'm going to assume maybe people here aren't public policy majors. If you are, there's like a separate kind of career process for that, like our own career center. But I think the importance of using like the Duke alumni website database, where you can use like the advanced search to find people at certain firms or in certain industries or in certain cities. That's really helpful. I did that. I use that all the time in college for internships that weren't at Booz, and also for my job. You know, maybe like not every single person is going to respond to you, but you'll get some responses, and everyone's that I've spoken to has been really nice. And I would recommend that a little bit over LinkedIn. I think it can go either way, but I think it's just when someone sees like the Duke connection immediately, I think that really makes them want to speak. But yeah, I've already like spoken to people who go to Duke, and like everyone comes really with a lot of questions. Like I always did. I would like spend a little bit of time just trying to look up the person before I met, like learn a little bit about what they did at Duke, see like where we had any common like ground, because, you know, you don't want to like come to one of these conversations and like expect them to just talk at you for 30 minutes, which I learned both like doing them while I was an undergrad and then now. So my advice would be to just be like prepared if you do have one of these calls.
Yeah, happy to jump in here. Definitely second what everything that Katherine said. I think in general, the Duke Alum Network is just so willing to spend time and talk to you and just learn about your interests and invest in kind of your career pathway. I think that's something that as students, we all probably experienced. And now as alumni, it's something that I think I always am willing to do. I think anytime I see like a Duke student reach out to me or try to connect with me, I try to make my best effort to be a resource for them. And so I would say for students, I think LinkedIn can be a little bit of a hit or miss for alumni, and sometimes people don't regularly check them. I'd say if you do have any sort of connection or person that can introduce you to someone at a firm that you're interested in, definitely take advantage of that. I think that can go a really long way. I know, at least for myself, if somebody that I know decently well tells me that they know somebody else that's interested in like asking a few questions about Booz Allen, I'm very willing to talk to them. And that's always a really good way to kind of get an in if you don't necessarily have a direct connection at a company that you're interested in. So I would say go even one step further and see what sort of second or adjacent connections you can find, and definitely take advantage of them, and don't be afraid to, you know, just ask for an introduction. It doesn't have to be like a 30-minute call. Like it can just be a 15-minute brief chat. And I think even prefacing that as like you just want to learn and you want to just ask a couple of questions, I think that always is a good way to approach it, like making a networking call and taking that step forward to learn about a company.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of the above. I would add with the LinkedIn versus Duke Alumni Director, I think you should use them both. I mean, they're both very valuable tools. You know, maybe you use LinkedIn to figure out who works at what company that went to Duke, and then you go to the alumni directory to email them. You know what I mean? So make use of your tools, and when you do reach out to people, make sure you're, you know, resourceful and respectful, and you're not just rapid firing a million questions to them without letting them actually answer your question. You know, give them time to explain themselves, and who knows, maybe they'll be nice enough to offer a referral or something. So
Thank you. So changing topics a little bit, what is something that students should focus on or make sure they accomplish or engage in, participate in during the undergrad time if they're wanting to pursue a career in consulting? Is there something that stands out to you that you think would be instrumental with them securing that consulting internship or job?
I'm happy to kick this off. I think that having a very strong resume and cover letter is a very important part of your application to consulting firms. And I think that there are a lot of resources at Duke that can help you make your resume very, very appealing, or just, you know, improve and better for these types of applications. I know, especially in the public policy school, I had someone that worked with me on my resume and helped me, you know, quantify a lot of the experiences I had. And I think that's a very big thing in resumes for consulting applications, is they want to see, you know, the impact that you made, one, but also they want to see that quantified in pretty much everything that you talk about. So I think using the resources available to you, whether it's the Duke Career Center, your major, your department, whoever, or even if you have a professor that you're close with, I would just say take advantage of any resources you can in terms of making a very strong resume and cover letter, because I think that does really go a long way for an application.
I can go next. I definitely agree with Ashna. I think something that I also found important was having like potentially, especially different cover letters, of course, but even sometimes different resumes based on the jobs I was applying for. Those of you who are like applying to a range of different places, applying for like a tech consulting type role, you should probably definitely have a different cover letter. It can be, you know, the same experiences, but like put a different like frame on them. But even different resumes sometimes, like I would apply for some more communications consulting type roles where I would harp on my like communications experience. And you can kind of, if you have certain internships can be framed in really different ways. And I agree with what Asha said in terms of quantifying things. I didn't really do that until I started applying for consulting jobs, like my prior internships. I didn't really do that, but I do think that's really important. And I also would stress the fact, especially when you're kind of in the grind of applying for internships and jobs, I think it's really important to like think more holistically about the types of things that you do at Duke and also that you're just really passionate about. So I think for a while at Duke, I thought like my grades would be like the number one thing that would get me a job. And maybe if you're like a junior or senior now, you probably realize that's not necessarily the case. And that doesn't mean like overextend yourself and do a lot of different things. But, you know, in an interview, you're not really going to be talking about like the grades you got on that test or exam. You're going to be talking about, oh, I did this really cool research with a professor and like we presented it, or we wrote a paper, or we did like I made a PowerPoint and presented it to, you know, what I'm saying. And even just like doing things that you're passionate about, I think really comes across when you're talking about it. So like I loved my thesis. So whenever I was in interviews, I would talk about it. And I think just like being that excited about something also helps. So yes, of course, like your grades matter, your classes matter. And you can always talk about a project in a class. It doesn't have to be like you were the president of the consulting club at Duke or something. But I think I realized towards the end of my job search that like those experiences were more important than the grade on the exam.
Yep, I agree with everything here. I think the last thing I'll add is just honing in your social skills, which sounds kind of weird, but yeah, you can have the flashiest resume of all time. You can have all the experience in the world, but if you don't know how to talk to someone or communicate well, then that kind of goes out the window. So bringing your woosah, you know, being calm, being able to communicate clearly, having confidence and poise while you're speaking, I think those are super indispensable. So while you're at Duke, if you can take a public speaking class or maybe you know, I don't know, but just try to be a confident speaker and somebody who engages well with others, because yeah, you'll probably do a case study or something for the interview, but they're really looking at how you communicate and if they want to, you know, sit next to you on an airplane for 2 hours or sit next to you on the elevator or whatever. So hone in that stuff as well.
Amazing. Awesome advice. What is something that you find most enjoyable about your role, and what is something that is maybe lower on that role or role? Because we all know it's not rainbows and butterflies all the time.
I know monotony. Every day is different. Every project's different. If you don't like an 8-week project, 8 weeks later you'll be free. You'll be set free. The thing that I really don't like as much can be the work-life balance, as well as just some people are super nitpicky, and because you're working on different teams, you don't always get, you know, a well-oiled machine. Like you may have a really good project for 3 months and then you get on something else and there's a different manager who just has different ways of working, and maybe you guys butt heads or something. So it's about managing personalities, communicating expectations early and often, and being a team player, as cliche and candid as it sounds.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think a few things that come for mind to me as someone who just joined the workforce, something I was really looking for in a job, which is honestly part of the reason I switched to like looking at public sector consulting, was the fact that I really wanted to like go into the office and have like a cohort of people that I would get along with. And I think this speaks to Tyler's point about being like personable, and you don't necessarily have to be like outgoing or extroverted. Definitely don't need to think that, but just people that you would want to be like stuck in an airport with or something. And my prior internships had been like extremely virtual, very small, you know, like I would be the only intern on a team or something like that. So I really appreciated the fact that like some of these bigger companies have like more cohorts and like organized events, which makes, you know, the job a lot more enjoyable. Another thing I really like, I mentioned this before, we have a cap of 40 hours of work a week, which like can increase as you move up, but that's been really nice in terms of work-life balance. Like my boss really respects that, and I would never be asked to work more than that. And then I would say one thing that is I didn't like as much when I joined the firm, but I see it kind of as both a benefit, a positive and a negative now, is that at least at our firm, and this happens at other firms as well, and I'm not exactly sure like which ones do what. Definitely a good question to ask in a coffee chat, but we get hired like not right onto a project. So there's kind of a period of time where you are searching for a project yourself, or I shouldn't say yourself, like you're given lots of resources, people are there to help you. You're not just like thrown in and said like good luck. You have like a career manager who is supposed to like help you find a project or give you or let you on their project. So there are a lot of people helping you, and there's no set deadline to start on one. So it can range from like 2 days to 6 months that you're not on a project yet. And I think, you know, it can be seen in both ways. I think at first I was a little confused by that process and a little like stressed because I didn't know if I would be like fired if I couldn't find a project in 2 weeks or something, which definitely you are not. But at the same time, looking back on it, I actually think it can be like a really big benefit because you have a lot of say in the work that you do. So rather than being like thrown onto any project on the first day of your job, which could be like, some of these firms are huge. There's such a range of projects you could be thrown onto that could be so outside your like skill wheelhouse. Having the time to like figure out what type of project made sense for me, what type of client I wanted to work with, actually ended up being really beneficial. So I kind of see that in both lights.
Yeah, I think something that has been really great, at least at Booz Allen and in my experience so far at the firm, is how willing people are to talk to you in terms of doing even just internal networking at the firm, and how willing people are to just like learn about your interests and tell you about what they do. And I think it was a really valuable experience to have that kind of culture, especially as someone coming directly from undergrad, not really knowing like exactly what goes on in different projects and consulting and what actually people do on a day-to-day basis, especially at Booz Allen. And so I think having such a welcoming like culture and people just being so willing to like hop on a call with you for like 20 minutes and talk about what they do on a day-to-day basis and what their project is like at Booz Allen was a really, really valuable way to just get more acquainted with the type of work available at the firm. So as Katherine was mentioning, we join not on a project, but in that time, we usually spend time talking to other people within, you know, our account and the space that we're aligned to. And I think the way people are so willing to connect with you and learn about you, and then also just talk about what they have experience in, is really, really great. Something that I wasn't expecting, and I think this might be more indicative of government contracts, is just essentially the length of some projects and how long some contracts can be. I know at least within the health account, some of the contracts can last up to 5 years. And so sometimes as a consultant, that can be difficult to navigate if you want to change a project, say within 6 months or a year, and you want to get a new experience, especially as someone coming from undergrad who wants to get exposed to a lot of things. So I think there's kind of pros and cons to that. I think once you're later on in your career, if you're on a project that is 100% aligned to what you want to do in the area you want to be in, having longer contracts and a deeper client relationship can be really valuable. But if you're early in your career and that's not necessarily a value, learning how to have those conversations of, you know, hey, I want to leave this contract and do something else, that's also, I guess, a skill set that we'll have to develop.
Awesome. Thank you so much for each of you sharing your perspective on that. I think I will ask one more question and then we'll open it up for Q&A. Students, if you have something on your mind that you would like to ask or get advice on, feel free to drop it in the Q&A channel or drop it in the chat or come off mute. Totally fine either way. We would love to hear from you and hopefully give you some helpful information. But the last question that I have for our panelists is, are there any resources you were encouraged to use during your undergrad or you found on your own that were really helpful, or from the Career Center or Paul's Career Center? Were there resources or helpful tips that you were given that you would like?
I can start. Depending on the company you're applying to, if you're applying to strategy consulting, commercial strategy consulting, then there will likely be a case interview element to the interview. So what was super helpful for me was some of the resources that the Duke Consulting Club had. And I think one of them was more central to Fuqua Business School. Actually, they had I think it's called, you can Google it probably, there's a PDF or something. Just type in Duke Fuqua Casebook or something like that. And you can get a bunch of cases that will help you practice with the case study interview. So that's really helpful, kind of sharpen those skills. And then your classmates, I think they're also a resource too. If they're recruiting for the same company that you're recruiting for, yeah, there's friendly competition or whatever, but you guys can case together. You guys can, work together to kind of hone your skills, like I was saying, with the case study, or maybe practice behavioral questions with each other. So utilize, case books, classmates, alums. And then, there's obviously other case study resources out there that I recommend. A good book is called, I think it's called Hacking the Case Interview. So if you're trying to sharpen your case study skills, give that a look. I think it's on Amazon for like $15. So take a look at that.
Was it Crack the Case? Was it that one, or was it a different one?
I think it's called Hacking the Case Interview by
Okay,
Taylor
okay.
Warfield. So I can put the name in the chat.
Awesome.
Yeah, I agree with what Tyler said. Like I mentioned previously, I didn't really go down like the commercial consulting route, which meant that there were less traditional case interviews, but I agree that there are like a ton of resources out there, both on like the Duke Career Center website, a lot of different clubs. Ask your friends and your classmates. Like, I'm sure anyone else going through this process has example cases to use. I know some of my friends watch videos too, to like watch someone successfully do a whole case, which I think can be really helpful depending on your learning style, if you just look on YouTube for those. Some of the interviews that I did were more so like take home cases, if you think about it like that. So maybe like getting a set of data and having to do some like Excel analysis and then making a PowerPoint, which like was much more similar to the type of work I think I do like in this public sector space. So that was more for the public sector interviews. But most of them were behavioral interviews for me, honestly. So just knowing like your resume really well. And again, like we were saying, kind of being able to like quantify things, or being able to talk about the impact that you made. Like, it's not the time to be kind of like humble. Of course, you don't want to come across like bragging about anything, but if you like made a really significant impact, you should tell them that. And I think that was something I learned like as I went through college, just being like a little more outspoken about like my accomplishments. Even if it feels kind of awkward, like it's important to speak about.
Yeah, definitely second everything that Tyler and Katherine said. I didn't really know if I wanted to do more private sector or public sector consulting. And so in my interview prep, I did prep for case studies. And I think something that can also be really helpful, along with finding books that introduce you to how a case is structured, is also having like a case buddy and just talking through cases and actually practicing them verbally with somebody and essentially mimicking what a case interview would be like. I ended up having 2 to 3 case buddies that I would just work with through work on cases with. And we would just essentially role play and alternate between one of us being the interviewer and the other being the interviewee. And then the next time we'd meet, we would flip. And I think every time we would meet, we would try to do different types of cases to get more familiar with different types of, situations that you could be put in. And so I think having case buddies can be a really, really valuable tool and kind of make you feel less nervous about the pressure that you might feel in a case interview. I think they're really, really helpful in building your confidence. And we've talked about like the value of speaking clearly and communicating clearly. And I think practicing a case out loud with someone who can give you real-time feedback is incredibly valuable. I know, at least for me personally, in case prep, I think questions that involve doing a lot of calculations or math were particularly stressful for me. I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but I know some of my case buddies also felt that way. And so I think even just doing like mental math drills is also a really good way of just getting your mind kind of more oriented to that mindset and kind of that quick thinking. And then on the other side, I think just practicing out loud, like even behavioral questions that come up in interviews a lot. Like I'm sure you can find like blog posts online and lists of common behavioral questions. I think even just talking through those out loud and physically recording yourself answering a question and then listening back is a really helpful way for you to identify how you're actually answering the question and how concise you're being, or if you're saying the word like too much or things like that. So I think the out loud practice is a really valuable tool.
Amazing. Great advice. Thank you to each of you for answering that question. And I just kind of want to like tag on one last thing to that, is I will say most of the resources that were mentioned, we have links to through our office, and there's definitely things that we can discuss further one-on-one if that would be beneficial to you. If you have more of a unique case scenario or have follow-up questions on any of that, feel free to let myself know or any of my colleagues, because we want to make sure that you get to where you want to go in terms of career. So I want to make sure we're respectful of everyone's time tonight. So let's transition to question and answer. I do have a few questions that have come in. And then in the chat, I also sent a link to a survey. If you could each make sure to fill that out. Attendees, panelists, you don't have to worry about it. But those of you in attendance, please take just a brief moment to fill that out before you head out for the night. And then let's go ahead and jump into these questions. One question came in to any panelist that wants to tackle this. I've been told by some people that they have found success in reaching out directly to campus recruiters. How should we go about doing this? What would be a good way to approach them and perhaps advance an internship? That was part one of the question. I'll start with that.
I can go. I think that there's definitely no, I don't think there's any harm in doing that. I think I probably did that. I think it could be beneficial. I wouldn't like necessarily expect maybe anything to come from it. But if you just send like a formal email in your resume, and if you have like a specific question, that might be the most helpful way to do it. I think if you just introduce yourself, like nothing probably will come from it. You could maybe ask for like 15 minutes of their time, but I guess I'm not positive whether like you would really garner a response that way. But I don't know if Tyler or Ashna had different experiences there.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I agree with Katherine in that I don't know if it's good to maybe expect something out of that besides just getting more knowledge about the recruitment process. But I do think there is a lot of value in even just asking more questions on like how the recruiting is structured, like if there are specific things that they look for. I would kind of maybe approach it in a way where even if you just want to ask about like offices of interest for you, like if there's specific cities that you want to be in, like you could ask questions about that. And if they have information about that, I know certain companies, like there's certain offices that will recruit a lot more heavily from Duke. And so like even just asking questions like that, like are there specific offices that like tend to hire more Duke students, could like be a great way to approach that kind of a conversation. But I would definitely like phrase it as like a 15 minutes of your time, and just like try to learn more about the recruitment process versus like hoping that you can advance an internship, because I don't know if that's necessarily like going to happen through a networking call with a campus recruiter.
Yeah, I echo the above. I think if you reach out to a campus recruiter, especially one that's tied to Duke, they'll probably just send you a link to apply, or they'll say, "Yeah, we're going to be on campus this week, and you should come," type of thing. So, and you have to think about it in their eyes. Like let's say they receive one of those messages from all the people who want to apply. They can't possibly give preferential treatment to each individual person. So, if you do that, beware. You may not get a response. Beware.
Absolutely. Part two to that is, should you reach out to the recruiter prior to networking within the company / applying online, or is it an okay starting point? I feel like that was already addressed, but if there's anything you want to add, feel free. Okay, awesome. Another question is, how would you differentiate the difference between a good interaction and a bad interaction when chatting with the person at the company? I would assume this is meant to be, correct me if I'm wrong, but this question being framed in regards to an informational interview potentially, or a networking chat. Person that sent that question, feel free to clarify, but any advice on how to differentiate between a good interaction or a bad interaction when chatting with someone, and maybe how to best handle that situation?
I would say think about the conversations you have in your everyday life. And I don't mean this in any kind of sarcastic way, but think about a good interaction between your friend that you're eating at West Union with, and then a bad interaction. And that's a good starting point. Now, I think when you call people, yeah, they might be really busy with something and only have 20 minutes, and they're like trying to rush you off the phone or something like that. Don't read too much into that. People have the stresses of their lives that are affecting them. So if they decide to take your call, then I think you should be appreciative of that and just be respectful of their time and let them know that you're thankful for them, giving you some time. So I wouldn't look too much into did it go well? Did it not go well type of thing. Just ask your questions, be respectful, that type of thing.
Yeah, I would second that. I think if someone is taking time out of their day to take your call, I think that's already like a lot. Like, I think that's already like good for you. And I think like you should be like glad that, well, like you should also be proud that you're able to like talk to this person and like ask your questions, because I think like you're not going to get a response from every single person you reach out to. So if you do make it onto someone's calendar, like I definitely would just, be respectful. Definitely don't go over time. Always send follow-up, like thank you emails or like messages. And I'd say like if they are, like being very cut and dry in the conversation, like Tyler was saying, I don't think that you should take that as like reflective of like that being a bad interaction. Like sometimes like that's just how people are. Like they could have had a busy day if they're taking your call at like the end of a work day. I wouldn't necessarily make any sort of assumptions. And I think I would just follow the like ask your questions, just try to be as respectful as you can. Try to just be as like genuine as you can too. I think like just kind of like running through a list of questions and not having like any sort of back and forth conversation could also maybe not make it the best like call. I think even just like asking them like how their day was, like when you get on the call, can just be like a great way to break the ice and make it like more of a like, I'm talking to you for 15 minutes. I'm not just asking you my list of like 10 questions. I think anything you can do to make it a little bit more genuine is better.
Amazing. I think that's perfect. last question that's come my way as of right now, which may be the wrap up for tonight, is what were the best questions that you asked during networking or your researching that best helped you narrow down which types of consulting or which firms to pursue?
I can start with this one. I think, first of all, like we said earlier, I think just spending some time, like either looking up the person that you're talking to or like the firm itself, or like the types of areas they focus in, would be really helpful for like getting the most out of your conversation. Not only are you like then respecting someone's time, but also you'll benefit the most if you like kind of go into it with some background knowledge. I think for me, like it was important to ask about like people's day-to-day lives, especially those at like the more junior level. Like you definitely will benefit from speaking to more senior individuals as well, but getting to understand like really what would I actually be doing day to day was really important to me. I think it was important to me to understand like that even if they can't say like all of the clients they work for, the exact projects, just getting like a general vibe of the different clients that they work with or like the types of projects, I think was really helpful for me. Like there are definitely some firms or some offices that focus on different things and it's not necessarily like set on the website anywhere for public consumption, but like people talk about it even if it's kind of vague, which was really helpful for me. And then I think like you'll know what's important to you. For me, like work-life balance was important, but maybe you don't care all about that and you care more about like, will I be able to utilize this specific hard skill because like you're really passionate about coding or something? I don't know. There's so many different, like, I think figuring out what's important to you in a job is like what should come first. And then you can make your questions off of that.
Excellent. I love it. Thank you to, first off, each of our panelists. Thank you, Ashna, Katherine, and Tyler, for taking time out of your day to offer your expertise and experience and advice to students and students. Thank you for attending tonight. If you haven't already, please take a moment to click the survey that I sent in the chat, fill that out. We appreciate your feedback. And I think that is all we have for tonight. Hopefully it offered you some helpful advice and bits of information in regards to consulting, and hopefully we'll see you all soon. Thank you so much for coming.
Great. Thank you guys. See you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.